a very useful and enjoyable drawing style to develop, particularly if we like urban sketching or location sketching, is a nice brisk sketching style directly in ink. And particularly, it's useful to develop this style in relation to ornate, complex, grand buildings. It's a great skill to develop to simplify and to draw the effect of what we're seeing directly in ink in a quick period of time. It lets us capture scenes that otherwise we would think, oh, I don't have time for that. This drawing of Notre Dame took me just over 25 minutes to do. And the main thing I'm working on in my line work and my thinking is proportion and effect. I'm trying to keep the proportions correct, so I want the relative height to width of the two towers on top to look the same on my drawing as they do on Notre Dame. And then I also want the building below the towers to also be in the same relative proportion. And if you've never noticed, the left-hand tower is slightly wider than the right-hand tower. The right-hand tower, and I think we can see it here, is slightly thinner. It's a metre thinner, in fact. Don't ask me why. So the important thing is to try and capture the widths of the various spacings in the tower and to get the dark shadowed belfry openings in proportion. And you can see me now trying to get this perspective line at the right angle as well. Now I reserve space for the tree. Trees are great. Once we become comfortable in drawing them, trees are great because they're a way of filling up a substantial part of our page, often very quickly and very easily. And if we establish the area the tree is in and establish how we want to work it, then it can also be a detail that we can fill in later. So having got the first tower drawn, the next challenge is to draw the second tower so that it looks in the right proportions to the first tower. And you'll notice that I'm doing the link between them as well. But really, the important thing at this point to focus on is the negative space between the towers. I'm trying to create the proportions of that negative space with how I place this second tower. Now you'll notice I've started at the top of the drawing and worked down. That's not a technique I often use. However, in this case, it seemed to me the easiest way to start drawing the building, Notre Dame, accurately, because I thought each of the towers was a relatively separate shape that I could draw with the easiest measure of accuracy for the proportions, and then I could reference from there. There was just so much happening at ground level, it seemed that it was just too complex to try and do it there. And once I've drawn the upper part, then I can use that as a reference of proportion for the lower parts and for the side. And really, these are the parts that stand out anyway of the building. Now, you'll notice that I'm just hinting at the Gothic decoration. I'm just hinting at these little baubles, as I think of them, that often run down the sides, and particularly the top of the towers of Notre Dame. I don't try and represent them all, but when I put them in, I need to make them small and close to create the effect of the building. And there is so much detail that I really am not trying to draw at all, even on these towers, let alone on the rest of the building. And so you can see what I'm doing here with this next section below the towers. I'm trying to capture the sense of these repeated thin columns and the window tracery, the piercings above them. And again, I'm just establishing that through the shadows, not through trying to draw the actual structures. And then there are some things we see between them, some shadowed spaces that we see between them. And now I'm moving down to the next section. So I have the rose window, and fortunately there's not too much of it in view. This tree very conveniently covers what is otherwise often the most challenging part of a Gothic cathedral. And so just trying to work out the position in here. Now that horizontal line is a bit too low down, and I raise it a bit. Probably this is just a little bit too wide overall. But again, I'm just trying to capture not so much a simplified view, because I still need to capture the effect of the decoration, but certainly a stripped down view, and I need to focus carefully on what decorative elements I choose to suggest and which ones I don't worry about. Shadows are very important though, because we see them really easily and we make judgments about the building structure from the shadows it causes. Now I have these rows of biblical figures, or are they kings? Probably both, that stretch along the front facade. And again, I only suggest them, and I suggest them really by the shadows around them. And it's just the hint of a head that I'm going for. And now I have this tree, and not just is the line work going to be in contrast to the line work of the cathedral, but the value is going to be different. There's going to be a lot of darkness created by the hatching and the cross hatching of the cathedral. It's easy to keep noticing parts we've missed in a building with as much decoration as the Cathedral of Notre Dame. And then back to the tree. And then there's another tree. It is really important to work on our tree drawing skills if we enjoy drawing architecture, because in cities and particularly grand architecture, there is often large trees around as well. And it's always a shame if the trees end up being a weak part of our drawing. If you're finding this interesting, please hit the like button. It really does help my channel, and comments as well. And if you haven't subscribed, why not? So for now, just trying to work out the details, and it does suddenly get much messier when we get down towards the ground. The Cathedral of Notre Dame is on the banks of the Seine River, so we have here one of the stairways that lead down to the water, and there's also a bridge crossing the river on the right. So I just need to sort out where those are going to go, and trying to work out where to put the ground level. I lower the ground from where I initially think it might be. Notre Dame Cathedral does have a certain squatness, I feel, when you look at it front on. It does seem to finish just a little bit too quickly when it comes down to ground level in some ways, I think, for the proportions of the upper part. So I'm not so sure whether I'm establishing the ground level where it is or where I think it ought to be. And you can see me now trying to really get some dark areas, but again, not spending too much time. This is a 0.2 millimeter pen, so it's not very wide, so it can be a little time consuming to get a real blackness without hatching over a large area with it. And just trying to work out these riverside details. Now you'll notice with almost all the detail I've got at ground level, the people, the signs, the cars, the vehicles, the suggestions of things I'm not even sure what they are in the photo. how gestural they are and how I've not tried to draw people and cars, and I've really just tried to give enough line work that suggests that these objects are there. It's a much more straightforward way in lots of ways to do it. So now the bridge, I'm really wanting to do this lower section with quite a light touch in terms of the line work, the pressure, the detail. I don't want it to become a focus point. I really want the eye to go to the cathedral, to the towers, to the silhouette. So I keep it fairly sparse, what I do here. I don't think I even suggest the stonework of the embankments. Now some more work on this tree. And I'm starting to think of the side of the church, that small section I need to put on. It's the sort of detail where I might have switched to a 0.1 millimeter pen just to keep it a bit lighter, but I decide that it's a relatively small area and I'll just use my 0.2 millimeter Copic multiliner lightly as I do it. Just finishing these suggestions of crowdedness at the ground level. And now just referencing where it comes out and taking care not to bring it out too far. It is very foreshortened. What we see of the side facing the Seine. And I certainly want these details to feel further away than the front facade. So just a very light suggestion of detail. Looking at the trees. And now what am I going to do over here? I decide to put the hint of a building that the photo does capture. That originally I'd planned to crop it out and I just missed it. But I think in some ways it is a nice frame to the building on the left-hand side. Keeps the eye on the page. And then there's just a glimpse of a building that we see through there. So at 25 minutes for a drawing of Notre Dame Cathedral, I think this is a great style to aim at developing, particularly if we enjoy location sketching. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Look, I hope you found this interesting. Hope you found it helpful. I hope you give this sort of style of drawing directly in ink a go. And of course, you'll find the reference photo on my channel community page. But hey, whatever you draw, however you draw it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.